He shoved my graduation cake off the table. Frosting splattered across the stone patio, candles rolling under guests' feet. Then my 12-year-old nephew, Tyler, grinned and said, "Eat it off the ground, Aunt Rachel." The entire gathering erupted in laughter. My mother laughed the loudest. I stood there, serving knife still in my hand, wondering how love could sound so cruel. I didn't say a word, just set down the knife and walked out while their laughter followed me into the twilight. That night, my mother's text lit up my phone. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." My sister liked it with a heart emoji. I typed one line back. And that's when everything changed. The backyard looked like something from a lifestyle magazine. String lights twinkling overhead, the aroma of grilled steaks drifting through the warm Denver evening air. From the outside, it was the perfect family celebration. But standing there with a paper plate in my hand, I could feel it. That familiar tension that everyone pretended didn't exist. My mother, Margaret, glided from guest to guest with her practiced hostess smile. My sister, Jennifer, held court at the center of attention, radiant in her new designer dress. Her son, Tyler, sat beside her like a prince, basking in the spotlight that had never found me. "Tell us about the Cancun trip," someone called out. Jennifer laughed, tossing her hair. "Oh, it was incredible. Mom insisted we extended another week." Margaret nodded with false modesty. "Well, they work so hard. They deserve it." I smiled the automatic smile of someone who'd learned to hide disappointment. No one asked about Portland. No one asked about my master's degree in environmental engineering. On the dessert table sat my cake, white frosting, navy lettering that read, "Congratulations, Rachel." It had been pushed to the far corner beside a stack of disposable plates and half-empty bottles. Every passing guest bumped it carelessly, as if it didn't matter whether it stayed upright. I stared at it longer than I should have, recognizing something familiar in its placement, beautiful, present, yet utterly forgotten. A breeze rustled through the yard. The lights swayed gently. For just a moment, I let myself hope this time would be different. Maybe they'd surprise me. Then Tyler charged toward the table, mischief gleaming in his eyes. His voice cut through the chatter. "Aunt Rachel, Mom says you only got your degree so you could act better than us." The laughter that followed was sharp, ugly, familiar. Margaret didn't correct him. Jennifer pretended to hide her smirk behind her wine glass. Even my father, Richard, remained absorbed in his phone, silent as always. I thought about every time I'd been told to share, to sacrifice, to be the responsible one. The one who didn't need attention, the one who didn't complain. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down like I always had. When Tyler's hand shoved the cake off the edge, it happened in slow motion. The ceramic plate shattering, frosting splattering across my shoes, candles scattering. Everyone gasped, then laughed even harder. I froze, gripping the serving knife I'd been holding. No one told him to apologize. Not even my father looked up. The last thing I remember was my mother's voice, light and dismissive. "Oh, come on, Rachel. Don't be so dramatic." I set the knife down carefully, untied the apron, and walked toward the gate. Every step echoed against the wooden deck. Their laughter followed me like music from a party I'd never truly been invited to. Outside, the air had turned cold, the sky bruising purple with dusk. I got in my car and drove away without saying goodbye. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I just knew something inside me had finally, irrevocably snapped. I drove for hours that night, headlights cutting through the empty Colorado highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. The sound of their laughter kept replaying, plates clinking, my mother's voice echoing, "Don't be so dramatic." By the time I reached my apartment in Portland, it was past 2 a.m. The city was quiet, rain streaking down the windows in rivulets. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the silence. My phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. For a heartbeat, I thought. Maybe it would be an apology. But when I opened it, the words cut deeper than any blade. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." A few seconds later, a red heart appeared beside it. Jennifer's reaction. I stared at the screen, my reflection ghost-like in the glass. My chest didn't tighten. Tears didn't come. I just sat there, numb, as if my body had finally stopped trying to feel what they'd never let me express. I opened my laptop, blue light flooding the dark room. The cursor blinked on an old spreadsheet, my budget tracker. 2 entries stared back at me. Parents' mortgage, $2,150 monthly Jennifer's Tesla, $890 monthly. Both loans co-signed by me. Both payments automatically withdrawn from my account for the past 4 years. I'd signed those papers because Margaret had said, "You're the successful one, honey. Family helps family." Back then, it felt like love. Now, it looked like chains. The rain intensified outside, drops hammering the glass in irregular rhythms like a countdown to something inevitable. I scrolled through years of messages, polite thank yous, guilt-laced reminders, endless excuses. Just until Jennifer's boutique takes off. "Your father's consulting work is slow right now. We'll take over the payments next month." Next month never came. The weight in my chest shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity, sharp and cold. I opened a new message and typed slowly, each word deliberate. "Removing my name from all loans tomorrow. Effective immediately." No emojis. No explanation. Send. The phone chimed once, then fell silent. I placed it face down on the table. The rain softened to a whisper. I poured myself a glass of water and watched condensation bead down the side. For the first time, silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like power. They had wanted me gone, fine. But this time, they would feel the weight of my absence. Morning arrived gray and clean, the kind of Portland dawn that washes everything new. I brewed coffee and watched steam curl from the mug, thinking how easily things end. Not with shouting, but with a single decision. I hadn't slept, but I felt more awake than I had in years. The exhaustion had burned away, leaving only crystalline calm. By 9, my phone vibrated constantly. Margaret, Richard, Jennifer, unknown Denver numbers. 147 missed calls. The family group chat exploded with demands, threats, guilt. "You've lost your mind. Do you understand what you're doing to us? We raised you better than this." Not one message said, "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled on a charcoal sweater, tied my hair back, and opened my laptop. My fingers moved with purpose. Pacific Northwest Credit Union, downtown Portland branch. Mr. Chen met me in a consultation room with sage walls and a small succulent on the desk. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes behind modern frames. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, offering a handshake. "I reviewed the documents you sent. I believe I understand the situation." I sat across from him, hands steady. "I co-signed 2 loans, one for my parents' house, one for my sister's vehicle. I've been paying them for 4 years. I need to be released from liability." He nodded slowly. "You're not the first person to be financially exploited under the guise of family obligation." He slid a stack of papers toward me. "If you can prove you hold no ownership interest in these properties, we can initiate the liability release process. We can also freeze any joint credit access." I handed him my folder. Lease agreements, pay stubs, email correspondence, even an old text from Margaret that read, "The house is ours. You're just helping with paperwork." Mr. Chen read silently, then looked up. "This is everything we need." He picked up the phone. "Legal, please initiate co-borrower removal for Rachel Mitchell, effective immediately." The sound of his pen clicking felt seismic. My hands trembled slightly as I signed each document. Every signature felt like cutting an invisible cord that had bound me for years. When he stamped the final page, the sound echoed through the room. He met my eyes kindly. "You did the right thing, Ms. Mitchell. Sometimes protecting yourself is the only way to teach others respect." Outside, the wind was sharp against my face, but my chest felt lighter than air. I stopped at a coffee shop on the corner. When the barista handed me a cortado, she smiled. "Have a beautiful day." I met her eyes and said something I hadn't meant in years. "I will." 3 days passed before the knock came. Sharp, angry, relentless. Each pound reverberated through my apartment walls. I froze mid-step, pasta water boiling behind me. My stomach clenched with cold certainty before I checked the video intercom. On the screen stood Margaret and Jennifer. Two faces I knew by heart, now twisted with rage. Margaret's lips were pressed into a line of fury. Jennifer's eyes were wild, desperate. "Rachel!" Margaret's voice sliced through the door. "Open this door immediately. We need to talk." "You destroyed everything," Jennifer shrieked. "The bank froze our accounts. My car's being repossessed. Are you happy now?" Happy. The word stung, not because of what she said, but because that's how they'd always treated my pain, as entertainment. I took a steady breath and turned on my phone's recorder. Then I dialed 911. "Portland Police. 2 individuals are outside my apartment, yelling and refusing to leave. I'd like to report trespassing." "Do you know them?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes," I said quietly, watching the monitor. "They're my relatives, but today they're trespassers." Outside, the pounding intensified. Jennifer's fists hammered the door. "Rachel, you're destroying this family. You think this makes you strong. You're selfish, heartless." Margaret's voice cracked with panic. "We're your parents. You don't abandon family." 10 minutes later, blue lights painted the hallway. 2 officers appeared, calm, professional. They approached Margaret first. I watched through the intercom as Margaret rushed toward them, pointing frantically at my door. "She's my daughter. She's destroyed our finances. We just want to talk." Jennifer sobbed dramatically. "She's ruined my life. My fiancé left me because of the credit damage." The male officer raised a hand gently. "Ma'am, this is private property. If she's asked you to leave, you need to comply." "She's my child," Margaret shouted. "I have rights." The officer shook his head. "Not to trespass on an adult's property. Let's go." Through the speaker, I spoke just loud enough. Once they chose to act like intruders, the word family lost its power. The officer nodded toward the camera, acknowledging without judgment. He gestured toward the stairs. "This conversation is over." Margaret turned back one last time, her eyes burning. "You'll regret this, Rachel. Blood is forever." I didn't answer. The door stayed closed. They left under police escort, their footsteps fading down the stairwell, heavy, defeated, gone. When silence returned, it felt like oxygen flooding a vacuum. I slid down against the wall, phone still recording. My hands shook, not from fear, but from release. I saved the audio file, Boundaries, Enforced, March 2024. That night, I stood at my window watching Portland breathe below. Cars streaming past, lights blinking, people living their lives. Somewhere down there, people laughed, loved, existed without the weight of toxic obligation. The next morning, my social media exploded. Margaret had posted, "Sometimes the child you trust most becomes your greatest. Betrayal." Rachel stole from her parents and destroyed our credit. Some people never learn gratitude. Below were dozens of comments from relatives, old neighbors, people I barely knew. "So ungrateful after everything you've done." "Poor Margaret, you don't deserve this." "I heard she used your money to buy that fancy Portland apartment." The old me would have panicked, written frantic explanations, begged for understanding. But now I just breathed. They were throwing flames, but I refused to burn. Instead, I sent one email to my workplace. Subject: Personal matter. Clarification team. If you encounter any online rumors about me, please disregard. Some people combat boundaries with lies. I'm well and appreciate your continued professionalism. Best, Rachel. Then I closed my laptop. Truth doesn't require defense, it only needs time. 3 days later, an envelope arrived. The letterhead read, Pacific Northwest Credit Union. Inside. This letter confirms that Ms. Rachel Mitchell has been fully released from all liability concerning the joint mortgage and vehicle loan under the names of Margaret and Jennifer Mitchell. The gold seal shimmered under the light. My fingers traced my signature. The moment everything changed. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. That evening, Margaret's Facebook post vanished. Maybe someone told her the truth. Maybe the bank called. I didn't care anymore because I'd stopped living for their approval. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. You'll pay for this, Rachel. This isn't over. I smiled faintly. It wasn't about winning. It was about freedom. Months passed. The calls stopped. The messages ceased. The silence that once felt like abandonment now felt like sanctuary. I thrived at work. My environmental restoration project earned recognition. My manager, Elena, said during a presentation, "Rachel leads with quiet strength. People trust that." It was the first time anyone had praised me without wanting something in return. Life found its rhythm. Sunrise runs along the Willamette, evening dinners with friends who saw me, not what I could provide. Marcus brought me a small cactus as a housewarming gift, joking, "It's like you, beautiful, resilient, but set clear boundaries." Then one morning, a message from Jennifer appeared. "I'm sorry for everything." 5 words. No excuses, no manipulation. I stared at it for a long moment, then set the phone down without replying. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it's closing it gently and walking forward in peace. That evening, I stood on my balcony as the Portland skyline glowed amber in the sunset. Mount Hood rose in the distance, steady and unmovable. I breathed in the rain-scented air and whispered to myself, "Welcome home, Rachel. You're finally free." If you've ever had to cut ties to save yourself, you're not alone. Your boundaries are not betrayal, they're survival.